Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your guest host, John Bird, EVP of Client Development here at Infotools. Today, we are joined by Sherri Dansby and Damon Jones, founding members of the association's IDEA Council, which works to fulfill a mission to deliver measurement, education, and standards of excellence to address the lack of representation in the insights profession and the population it researches. Thank you both for joining us on the show.
Thanks, John.
So what's the most significant thing you're going to tell us today, which we'll unpack and investigate a little bit more during the episode?
Yeah, I'm really happy to be here. We are really excited to share that the IDEA Council has accomplished so much since we started in 2020. So we'll talk about our IDEAtor Fellowship Program for young professionals, the Equity Toolkit, our research on research efforts to understand the current state of inclusion and diversity within the industry, and how to improve the execution of market research studies.
Perfect. Now let's start off some brief introductions. I'll tip it over to you, Damon.
Sure. Thanks for having us, John and team. I work for Burke Incorporated, full service market research firm located in Cincinnati, Ohio. My current job title is Vice President of Telephone Operations. And folks go, wow, you guys still have telephone? Yes, we do. It's still alive. That's my primary role, but I also serve in a role as chair of Burke's internal diversity and inclusion group titled Kaleidoscope internally. I've been involved with the Insights Association since it was the Marketing Research Association for almost 20 years. Served at a regional chapter level as chapter president. Started the first chapter level diversity committee in 2014. And Sherri was one of my partners on that group. I've been a member of the IDEA Council since its inception in 2020. My particular engagement with the group has been to help develop and grow the IDEAtor program with a great team of folks in the background. And I'm continuing as a part of that group to hopefully develop some deeper relationships with some universities around the country, and some historically Black colleges and universities and other associations to strengthen the ties and the pool of candidates who we can bring into this IDEAtor program.
Well, that's impressive, Damon. How about you, Sherri?
Yeah, thanks, John. Happy to be here. I'm on the client side, and I'm the Director of Patient Experience for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Michigan. And my focus is on improving health outcomes for seniors by supporting physicians and patient care delivery. I have more than 20 years of experience in market research with qualitative and quantitative research and insights, obviously mostly in the healthcare industry. And I have been active with the Insights Association for probably close to 20 years also, when it was the Market Research Association. Also served as president and in other positions with the regional chapter, along with Damon, as he talked about, on the first D&I committee. So really proud of that. And I've also been on the IDEA Council since the inception in 2020, and have worked also with the IDEAtors program and on some of the research initiatives that we'll talk about further.
Wow, very impressive. Thank you for the background. Sounds like you are both well positioned to contribute to the work the IDEA Council is spearheading. So let's dig in by covering at a very high level what the IDEA Council is and what the mission is all about.
Great. So IDEA, which is, I love the name, and when we talk about the name,
and we all need acronyms.
That's right. You gotta love a good acronym, especially in our industry. But IDEA is an acronym for inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. And as we've mentioned, it was launched in 2020. It was launched at a time frame, post George Floyd, when a group of very passionate researchers said, we really need to do something. We really need to take a closer look at our industry. So led by Melanie Courtwright at the Insights Association, amid, that incredible social justice movement. The charter is to advance the 4 pillars of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access within our industry. And our initial focus was on racial equity. But now, as we'll speak about later on during this engagement, it also includes gender and sexual orientation. And the council includes a really diverse group of talented research professionals who are all passionate about inclusion and diversity. And I've been super excited to work with that group. I've learned so much and just super excited about where we'll move forward.
Yeah, it's super important work, and there are a lot of initiatives coming out of the council. Can you tell me a little more about some of the ones that you're most excited about?
Yes, I can start. We're both really excited about the IDEAtor Fellowship Program that we mentioned earlier. So that was developed last year in partnership with Equitas, a partner that's been really great, and they helped us to formulate the program and to implement and execute the program. So they've been a great partner, and the program was really a way to support the next generation of insights professionals from diverse backgrounds. And we launched earlier this year, actually, with 10 fellows or ideators. So we're really proud of that program. It's a 12-month program developed, again, specifically to address the needs of consumer insights and data analytics organizations. And we're bringing in talent that they probably would not be able to find otherwise. And that's something that we always hear. And part of the program was designed to address that issue. We always hear that organizations can't find diverse talent. So we wanted to use this program as one way to start to address that. So we're really proud that we were able to find many candidates, great candidates. We didn't have enough space for all of the candidates that we found, but it's really just designed to accelerate recruitment and the progression of diverse talent within the industry, building the body of knowledge around inclusive insights. So we did a lot of promotion about the program, shared it across the industry, had a great response, and it's off to a great start.
So how does the program work?
So we have host companies who house these ideators, and the host companies help to fund the program, and they provide a 6-month remote fellowship opportunity for recent graduates or those individuals who are early in their careers. There also was a group of foundational sponsors who also helped to fund the program within the industry. As Sherri touched on, we had some targeted recruiting, and it was really incredible the speed at which that recruiting happened. Sherri and I were both a part of that interviewing process, and we interviewed some fantastic candidates. So I know I've utilized the IDEAtor story in many conversations over the last 6 months to dispel this notion that we can't find underrepresented talent. That's not true.
Not true.
As long as you have an intentional focus, you can find the talent. So, and a part of that is we focus on people with a passion and a potential who have more than market research or insight specific backgrounds or areas of study. There are not a lot of MMR programs across the country, and not all of the individuals who are part of some underrepresented populations have the access to attend these MMRs. And so we need to cast a broader net, be intentional in our recruiting. And so we were able to do this with this program. And so we have a ton of support, not only the IDEA Council and the little committee, the semi-committee that worked on the ideators, but we have mentors, both external mentors who are assigned to each of the ideators, but also internal organizational mentors to help them through this process. And as Sherri alluded to, Anna and Sandra from Equitas are just tremendous, and they've done a lot to help lead this program. We did like a full week onboarding where they got access to probably over 20 professionals telling their story and talking about the industry in depth during this onboarding session, so that they can hit the ground running with the organizations who've paid to support.
I have to say, I'm actually a bit jealous, because when I started out, there were no programs like this, and
Right.
there weren't many graduate MMR programs in place at that time. So I think they're at a great time, and I think we definitely put together a great program, and the onboarding program really helped.
It sounds like everybody kind of walked away with a big smile on their face too. So. Very fun. So, a little birdie told me that you're also very passionate about the Equity Toolkit. Can you share with us a bit more about the Equity Toolkit?
Yes, that was one of the first, I'd say, publications that we put forward. So really happy to talk about that too. So early on, we recognized that there was an appetite and a need for more information about the importance of inclusion and diversity within the industry, similar to, corporate America writ large. So the handbook provides guidance about how organizations and individuals can advance the principles of the IDEA Council. And it included a framework to help people keep the principles top of mind within their organizations, keep it a part of their business operations, and it included SMART goals, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with.
Yeah.
To help in planning and recommendations to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and access. There were resources included as well for inspiration around DEI activities. And really the goal is to create a culture of accountability and transparency within organizations. So this was, again, a guidebook, a toolkit with dedicated resources to help organizations with their efforts, help them in measuring progress, and helping them to set goals. So we shared the toolkit last year. Your listeners can find it on our LinkedIn page. So we're really proud about that as well.
So you're also not just conducting research on research, you're producing position papers. Can you give us a high-level overview of the findings and what you were trying to achieve with this research?
Sure. As with any good piece of research or tracking work to align it with what we're doing, several initiatives are aimed at understanding where the insights industry stands when it comes to equity among professionals, as well as improving how research is conducted. So there was a survey of U.S. Insights professionals to understand perceptions of the culture at their companies regarding the current state of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access. There was a survey of Insights organizations to understand diversity and pay equity across multiple levels. So junior levels, mid-managers, leadership, C-suite, and also research to improve how and when questions are asked on surveys. And so we just felt like there needed to be a good baseline of understanding of where the industry sat.
Yeah, definitely. You definitely see across the industry globally a lot of discussion around how to ask a lot of these questions. Can you tell us some of the insights you uncovered with the culture and equity surveys?
Sure, I'll start. I don't think it will be a surprise to many that more work needs to be done. It was helpful to conduct the surveys, though, as Damon mentioned, just to get a baseline. So from the race and ethnicity survey, we did find that there has been some progress, especially in terms of increasing diversity within organizations. And when we're looking at leadership roles, more needs to be done. Pay equity is also important. So from the two surveys, the key findings were that more work or steps have been taken, I should say, to attract younger, more diverse talent. But again, in leadership roles, more work needs to be done. the perceived impact that diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts have had thus far on the industry are mixed when you look at how organizations and individuals feel regarding the recognition of efforts, and they're outpacing noticeable benefits, some people would say. So we did find that organizations are at various stages in terms of monitoring and planning and building their cultures in terms of diversity and equity and inclusive cultures. Some have just started to formulate initiatives, and others are at later stages where they've actually implemented some DEI efforts or plans, and some are beginning to see benefits, but again, more work needs to be done, and this will be a good tool to use as a benchmark for the industry. So we do plan to repeat the survey as well.
No, definitely. So tell us more about the research on research efforts. You've explored how to ask the right questions, something very important to researchers in general.
Sure, I'll take this one. Like typical surveys rely on historical wording from the census or other mainstream sources to guide the questions, or repositories that we have internally at our organizations, and same for response options for demographic questions. So we wanted to take a closer look and understand perceptions and desires of people of color regarding this issue. So we asked people to review options, choose preferences, and then tell us why they made their selections, to get a deeper understanding of how people felt at answering these questions. And people see themselves as multidimensional, and many want surveys to allow them to fully describe themselves. So we're not all in a box.
Yeah.
And we tend to think about boxes in responses when we're humans and we have many layers to who we are, and we want to be able to tell who our full selves are. I think just another comment to add to that is we always have to remember in our industries that we rely on people, and they're just not a response, a stat, or demographic to look at, to analyze.
And they're definitely not none of the above, right?
Exactly.
So have you got any good examples of what this might look like?
Sure. Thinking about gender and how we ask gender. So we recommend a 3-question approach because it's an inclusive method and better captures the gender identity of respondents, while also being able to use to inform the sample design. So this line of questions has been tested on large-scale governmental studies, and this is what we currently recommend using in general pop surveys until we've tested other questions. So, for example, the lead-in question would be, what sex were you assigned at birth on your birth certificate? Randomizing either male or female. Second follow-up question, how do you describe yourself? Please select one, randomizing male and female again, but the options could be male, female, transgender, or none of these. And the follow-up question to that, if none of these, is what is your current gender identity, which will lead to an open-ended response where people can self-describe who are they, and they can fully express who they are. For race and ethnicity questions, we recommend considering whether this question is needed as a screening question or whether it can be placed with other demographic questions at the end of a questionnaire. That's something I know we've looked at even at my organization of, asking the question, do we need to ask this question? I mean, that's important. And for every study, we need to take a really closer look at what demographic questions do we actually need to ask, or is this something we can actually find in the data and append on the back end for certain questions. Now, gender is one where we want people to get the opportunity to self-describe, but it's always good to ask ourselves why. Back to asking race and ethnicity, we recommend a multi-select approach. For the greatest level of inclusivity, we recommend having an open-end question that's coded with an inclusive coding system. And we need more testing, obviously, to understand what questions and response options are the most inclusive and understood, and how to use them in sample design. The IDEA Council has published The Evolution of Demographic Questions, which is a position paper on how to ask demographic questions on gender, sexual orientation, and race and ethnicity. I know Kiana Osborne and Frankie Lipinski went on a tour. They were speaking almost every week at some industry events, sharing this detailed information in this documented report. And so, as Sherri alluded to, on our LinkedIn page, the IDEA Council, and also on the Insights Association website, anyone in the industry can have access to this data.
Well, it's exciting to see that we're trying to break the mold of how we've done it for years and years. So quite the accomplishment. So what's next on the agenda for the IDEA Council?
Yeah, well, we are in the early stages of a follow-up study, really, or second phase to the first demographic study about race and ethnicity. So the focus for the next one is on the LGBTQ community. So we want to understand more about the language and the tone appropriate for research among this community. And again, we're trying to understand how and when to ask about gender identity and sexual orientation. So we started with plans to conduct a quantitative phase, but after a few meetings, we decided to stop, change tact, and we're now doing exploratory research. So we decided to have a qualitative phase first, again, to learn more about from the community. When should we ask questions? What types of questions should we ask, and what should those responses be? So we're in I'd say, discovery phase at this point, where we're holding sessions to hear from the community and to use that information to help guide what we'll include in a quantitative phase of research. And that quantitative phase will begin soon, definitely before the end of this year. And we do plan to publish another position paper in the coming months once we have those results. So we're also increasing our relationship and reach with historically Black colleges and universities and other higher education institutions, with a special focus on diverse campus groups. And again, as a way to broaden the awareness of the industry and the IDEAtor Fellowship. So I would just add that it's great to have the space and time, as well as the support of the Insights Association, to conduct the research on research studies that can have a real impact on the industry, especially on making the industry more inclusive and diverse, not only for the people who work in the industry, but also for our consumers. So as a client-side researcher, we typically just don't have the time or budget to do this type of research. So it's been great to work on these studies.
Yeah, it's great. And Melanie has been a friend for a long time. She's an amazing woman. So it's fun to see this all come together. So I know you want to tell me, but how can people learn more about the IDEA Council and stay connected?
Oh, we love for everyone to find us on LinkedIn, search for the IDEA Council. We love that. Look for postings about idea concepts. So we try to communicate and make sure that, folks are talking about the research that we're conducting, and conversations that happen, on a daily to weekly basis inside our multiple organizations. Also go to www.insightsassociation.com, the IA page. It has a dedicated page for the IDEA Council. So you can find there, multiple professional development opportunities are offered all year through IA, and we've had a lot of inclusion, diversity, equity, and access topics. We had a very successful IDEA Forum this year. This was year 2. It's a virtual conference, and we had some very powerful panel conversations and presentations in the IDEA Forum. And so look for that next year. And we'll continue to share links. We'll continue to look for opportunities to present our research on research. Definitely go look for the evolution of demographic questions, the position paper we discussed earlier, to just give yourself the time to study and look at, exploring how you or your organization asks demographic questions on gender, sexual orientation, and race and ethnicity. Just stay engaged. We look for it, and we love the conversation. It's no, better learning opportunities than to talk, explore as an industry. That's also really exciting, is that we're learning together, and the industry has recognized that, hey, we need to move forward. And so we're super excited about where we're going, and the path that we're taking.
No, it's an incredible amount of work. It's an impressive amount of work, what you guys have accomplished. So thank you. And we will definitely get these links on the show notes. One last question. So how do you feel about the future of DEI? The work you guys are doing is super impactful. I'd love to hear your predictions for the next 5 years. Will we have made progress that you hope to see, and what progress do you hope to see in the next 5 years? But, what are some of the key challenges that companies are going to have moving forward?
Sherri, use your crystal ball.
Sherri with the crystal ball. So
I'll start, and then David, I'm sure you'll want to jump in too. But I would say, because we all know that the demographics of the country are continuing to change, and that will continue to drive the push for more inclusive workplaces, as well as research studies to help brands. So the diversity in that acronym DEI is a reality for our world, the world that we live in. So I think the work that we're doing now will definitely have an impact on study design, and eventually on who is actually designing the studies, which is exciting. So the IDEA Council will continue to support and advocate for the core principles that we've talked about to improve diversity and inclusion within the industry. And I would just add that consumers are diverse, and brands know that. They need to market to those audiences to remain successful. So I think as long as brands understand that, and they understand the impact to their bottom line, it will definitely continue to be top of mind for brands too. And I think that when we look at what's going on in terms of the labor movement, we've all heard about more employees unionizing, wanting to advocate for themselves, and to ask their employers for either higher pay, equal pay, better working conditions, and so on. So I think diversity and inclusion goes hand in hand with that. And I think that there will continue to be an appetite for that in the next 5 to 10 years and beyond.
Yeah, I definitely feel it's the secret sauce of growth. It's, we've been talking about diversity for so many years, but we're now starting to really push for making a change or having an impact.
You make a great point, John, and that's previously, and I'd say previously to 2020, and I'll use that year as a kind of line of demarcation, but you heard the term diversity, but now it's this full block of diversity, equity, inclusion, access, belonging. It's just so many terms, but so there's room to explore, and gives me the thought, like, we have to finish what we start, but there's no finish line. And so I hope organizations have the thought that this is just an evolving reality that we have to learn how to focus on, put some strategic thinking behind it, and some intentional movement as an industry. So it's many parts. It's the people, it's the hiring practices, it's the evaluation of jobs, it's the thought of how do we develop leaders and what that looks like. It's the utilization of these future researchers, these ideators who can bring a niche to our organizations with their inclusive insights. We're an organization that studies people and we try to predict what people do. So we should have a diverse set of people in our organizations and in our industry to make sure that we're looking at consumers the right way. And final point, unfortunately, there's a backlash to any progress. It's an inevitable thing, but we have to find ways to continue to respect each other and go through the process like any other process that we may go through for our individual organizations. It's not easy. It's not easy work. It's a lot of work, and John, you've touched on that, but it's work that's extremely valuable, and it's necessary for our industry to continue to thrive.
Yeah, and I think to continue to grow, we need to have a diverse perspective. We don't always have to agree with each other. In fact,
absolutely,
disagreeing is healthy. It's going to move things forward. And a lot of this discussion is uncomfortable, but we're pushing through it, and we're gonna make big decisions. So what would you like to leave our listeners with?
So I would say it's critical that DEI and or the concept of IDEA, inclusion, diversity, equity, and access is not the flavor of the month, and that your organization knows that. I think for many, I'm sure we could all name many things that our organizations tout, and then it sort of fizzles out. So making sure that it continues to be a critical part of any business strategy, that it's communicated throughout the organization. It's not just something that's held at the top, and that organizations understand where they are currently and then set goals to make progress and monitor their progress. I think that's what's key. Set goals for improvement, monitor, and hopefully in time we will see improvement within the industry and across the country, across industries as well. So I think this message definitely is not just for the insights industry, but for all industries.
So it's definitely not the flavor of the month. It's amazing how fast it's kind of gone across the industry. And I know Frankie we're always on meetings together, but it's fun to see young folk getting involved in these initiatives and be so passionate about it. So
absolutely.
That kind of leads directly to my last point, John, is think about how you can contribute individually. Like, at its core, it's really important for organizations to think about this, but, it comes from individuals as well, and your individual mentoring of folks and new researchers and new staff, and thinking about being that person to be an embracer. Like, that's critical as well, because I know a lot of folks have kind of, stuck their foot in, without like having this leadership direction, but their contribution is critical as well. And definitely go look at the IDEA Council and look at the links that will be shared. Again, we'd love to, if we have to leave anyone with that, is just, think about engaging.
No, a big thank you. And as I like to say, if you, be part of the solution, don't be part of the problem. And I think this is a lot of, helping people solve this problem. So thank you so much for joining us on today's episode, Sherri and Damon. It's been great to have you. It's been great hearing what you guys are up to. You've definitely been busy, and Sherri, I'm sure this is a part-time job. Full-time, part-time job.
Yes.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us. It's been great to share this information.
Yeah, and for obviously head out to their website to check it out. We'll post the links in the notes. And for our listeners out there, if you've liked what you've heard today, please subscribe to our podcast. Feel free to share it with others or leave us a review. And thanks for listening to Now That's Significant. Have a great day.